Well, welcome to the show. I'm Brendan.
I'm Corey, and this is Our View from the Bench.
Welcome back, benchwarmers. We have crowned two national champions in college basketball. It is time to discuss the results of these games and the dynasties we are witnessing.
And first off, we're going to start with the men's title game between UConn and Purdue. I'm Corey, towel boy for March Madness.
And I'm Brendan, net cutting ladder guy. And this is RV from the bench. Before we get started, if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss any one of our new episodes.
And if you could do us the favor, if you like what you see, please don't forget to smash that like button.
Smash it for us. It's free for everyone. Free for us, free for you, and it helps out a lot more than you probably think. Okay. Well, Corey, we've got to see it. Honestly, it was a really good March Madness 2024 for both of them. I know we're going to start with the men's, but the women's was, I mean, I got a lot more to say, to be honest with you. I wrote a lot more down about the women's tourney than I did the men's. But we're going to start with the men's. That one just concluded. It's Monday evening, so we just saw UConn get crowned as national champions for the second straight year. Their sixth total. 75-60 was the final. Any first thoughts or initial anything you watched it, I'm assuming, right? I only got to saw the highlights. I was kind of busy tonight.
No, I got home just in time. I think they were just about to tip off or doing the national anthem when I turned it on, so I got to watch the whole thing. First half was kind of what I expected. Both teams kind of back and forth. I think the 6-point lead at halftime was the biggest lead UConn had. Other than that, I mean, Purdue was in it the whole time, but it kind of was like every other game UConn's had in this tournament. Close maybe at halftime against a good team. Obviously not the first two rounds when you're kicking everybody's ass by 15 to 20 points. But every other game, it feels like they were, a couple points under double digits at halftime. Going at halftime, make some adjustments, come out and kind of catch them off guard, get a double-digit lead in, first 5 to 8 minutes of the second half, and then just kind of cruise from there. It's kind of what it was today, too.
Yeah, that seemed to be their MO, to your point. I watched a couple of the games. Most notably, I watched Iowa State game that that when they won that one because they moved on. That game was really close, and Iowa was a good team. In fact, a lot of people were picking them to be one of the upset teams and probably upset UConn because they were really stacked. And they, that trapezoid that we talked about. If you haven't watched it, if you'd like to know a little bit more about the breakdown of March Madness, we do some preview episodes. You can go check out the first one, kind of talk about this trapezoid. They were dead in the middle.
If you go back and watch it, you can look at my dumb ass talk about how Auburn's so good in top 10 offense and defense, and then they lost their first game. So.
Okay, well, ignore that part. But if you also want to go back, you can see that somebody predicted UConn to be back-to-back champs, and that was this guy right here. So, again, I almost predicted just because I knew they were good, and I love dynasties, and they kind of followed through for me. But, anyway, so that 30-0 run against Iowa State, all those types of things, to your point, this is what they do. They keep it close. They kind of fill out the opponent. They make sure that they're always in the game, if not leading, and then they go for the freaking kill shot. And, Dan Hurley just killed it. I mean, the whole team was good. Obviously, it's the players on the court to do the work, but the coaching was top notch.
Yeah, and speaking of the coaching as well, like I feel like they're kind of like the Warriors, wherein the Warriors were in their like prime of everything. Like halftime, they'd be like, it's okay. They're kind of playing okay. And then they would go into halftime, make some adjustments. And then that third quarter, they would just make it rain and go on a 30-5 run. And all of a sudden you're like, what the hell just happened? We were in this game and now we're down by 20 points. And it kind of felt like UConn did that in every game this tournament. They just kind of let think you're in it, go into halftime, figure out what they need to adjust and make changes. And then boom, come out and just and once they get that 10 to 15 point lead, it seems like everybody on their team, like defense picks up. They're more detail oriented, and then they just get you confused and lost. And Edey had a great game, 37 points, 10 rebounds, one of only two players in double figures for Purdue. And then they still lost by 15. But I mean, other than Edey, there was not really much else going on. 1 of 7 from 3 as a team, which even then that means typically what Purdue would do is you would throw it down to Edey, somebody would double, you kick out to the guy who's open, and they get open threes. But you can't do that. I mean, UConn doesn't have to double Edey because they have another big guy, to be there with him and kind of make him work. Now, he did score 37 still, but if nobody else is making anything, let him have as many points as he wants. One guy is not going to beat the whole team.
No, that's a very good point. And that Warriors reference is actually pretty good. I kind of like it. I didn't think about that like that, but that's exactly what they did, the Warriors back in the day, and what UConn did this year is lull them into it and then just kill him.
Yep.
Kill him quick. And it was really good. It was really good. So, UConn wins their 6th, 2 in a row now. Dan Hurley kind of talked about it afterwards. They won a lot lately too.
Yeah.
So I think in the past, like he said 25, 30 years that UConn's been running basketball, college basketball.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with them. There's only 4 teams that have 6 total. UConn now, UCLA, who was winning with Lou Alcindor, basically, so that's been a minute.
Yeah.
UNC, who was winning with Michael Jordan, so that's been a minute. And Kentucky, who was winning before Calipari, because I think Calipari only has 1. So
I believe
really
so.
the more, recent,
Modern.
I guess,
Yeah.
dominant school, it would be UConn. So I kind of very true. Last quote before I let you kind of continue. Sorry. Dan Hurley kind of said it after the game when he was being interviewed on the stage, and I agree with it completely, which is kind of why I don't know why I didn't think about it putting Purdue in the end, but it's one of the reasons why I had UConn in the end. He said, "We were the best team all year. Purdue was the second best team all year. As long as we come out and play our game, we were going to get it done." And that's pretty much what happened. To be honest with you, I think this was the matchup that was necessary. Anything else would have felt like maybe one of the other teams got robbed.
Yeah. And again, Hurley, man, just dedicated to, and got a culture built there, because he's been there for a couple years prior to them winning the 2 titles. Like
Correct.
I want to say it's like 2020, maybe
It was like
21, where he was quoted as saying like, they better get us now because we're coming.
Yes.
But I mean, who would have thought this is what he meant by that? My God.
No, yeah, we're coming for sure. I mean, back-to-back championships is hard. A championship, nonetheless, is hard to do, right? But back-to-back is damn near impossible. Like we said, it's been 14 years. What, 07 was the last one. It's been 14, 20, 15, what is that,
17
16,
years.
17 years since the freaking last time it happened. So there's obviously been a ton of talent in basketball.
And
a lot of it has to
also,
go through the NCAA.
yeah, and also, like, even when Florida did it, they had basically the same team come back. Like Noah,
True.
Brewer, Horford, and a couple other guys all came back for another year to try to do back-to-back. I believe they lost like 5 guys from the title team last year and kind of like reinvented themselves in a sense. I know there's a couple guys left over, but for the most part, it's like a new squad. And to be able to go back to back in this day and age with NIL and everything included, just tip the hat to Hurley and that coaching staff and that organization, that school, whatever you want to call it.
No, we're used to talking about it like that. That's a good point, though, especially in the NIL days, because that culture that you talked about that Dan Hurley's building there is, I think, really important. And I think Purdue actually has one too now. It's not like Purdue's been known as some like perennial basketball school before Edie and this regime has kind of come to light. So props to Purdue. Obviously, they had a really good run. They almost followed Virginia up when they lost as a 1 seed to a 16. Virginia was able to come back the next year and win the championship. Purdue, I think, at least made people not forget the fact that they lost, but kind of brushed off the that was just a fluke. I mean, granted, it'd be better if they won. That would really show the fluke. But losing to this UConn school, but still making it to the title game, I think kind of reassures the guys on that team that okay, we could put that one behind us. We almost kind of made up for it.
Yeah, and it's not like Purdue's been to a national title game very often, or like you said, they're not a basketball school normally. So, I mean, the fact that their superstar or like former player that was in the stands was Drew Brees, who's a football player, and they're not even well known for football either. So, like, just the fact that they were there, I think, is like a big step for this program. Now, Edie obviously is going to leave to the NBA at this point because he came back in the first place after last year's disappointment. So, I don't know what they're going to look like moving forward, or if there's going to be as high expectations from them as a basketball team. But again, it puts the school on the map. It gets the conference on the map. That the fact that they even got there, and again, like you said, losing to UConn, who's a dynasty right now, is not the worst thing in the world. You could have been randomly lost to some far out school that somehow made it there the same year as you, and it's just by chance. But you did lose to a team that is the back-to-back champions, and I don't know, might be in the running again next year, to be honest with Hurley, in the way he has everything situated over there.
Yeah, dude, exactly. Terrence Newton, obviously the MOP, the MOP, most outstanding player of the game. He did well, 20 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 0 turnovers as damn near the lead guard for the UConn Huskies. So obviously really deserved the most outstanding player, but it was really a team effort. You mentioned, or at least noted, 4 of the 5 starters were all in double figures, even had somebody off the bench with 9, so that was close. It's just a really well-run team. So props to the
That's exactly what it is. It's Edie who's the best player in the game, obviously 37-10, but ultimately nobody else kind of did their part on Purdue, and UConn did. Everybody stepped up and did their part. And again, team versus one guy in basketball is usually going to be a team effort.
Exactly. So congratulations to the Yukon Huskies, and honestly, a great season for the Boilermakers as well at Purdue. So, but I'm going to run with that last point that you kind of did, and kind of funnel us into the women's game. Uh, on Sunday evening, or actually it was early afternoon, Sunday
Yeah.
afternoon, at least noon Pacific time, South Carolina took on Iowa. Um, let's kind of base it off of what you had just said. Zach Edey, the lone guy, really lone ranger, as you could put it, for Purdue. Caitlin Clark, and it's not necessarily a shot at any of her teammates, but Caitlin Clark, kind of the lone ranger for Iowa as well, taking
Yep.
on that really big team / dynasty in South Carolina. How'd that shake out for you?
I mean, it was a great game. It's the fact that Clark had 30. I mean, that's what she's been doing all year: 8 rebounds, 5 assists. The weird thing was that she had 18 in the first quarter, and they came out blazing. I mean, Iowa's up, I think, 10 or 11-0, like right off the bat, and you're like,
Yeah, and 20-9
whoa.
at one point.
Yeah, so then you're thinking like, oh man, is South Carolina like were they not ready for that punch in the mouth? But by the end of the first quarter, I think it was a couple point game, and by halftime, South Carolina was up by a couple points. So then you're like,
Yeah.
okay, no, they know what they're doing. Obviously, Don Staley has already won 2 national titles as a coach, so. And yeah, it came down to team versus individual again. I mean, Iowa had 0 bench points. They only had 2 players that even came off the bench and played. So they basically were like, this is the 5 we got. We're going to roll with it. And I feel like once Clark had the first quarter 18 points, that's when Raven Johnson for South Carolina decided, like, no, I'm going to stick to her, as we used to say as kids, like fly on horse shit. Like she was all over her, was not giving her time to walk up the court. She basically met her at the opposite free throw line and made her work just to get into the half court and start to get a situation or an offense running. And it ended up paying off because I think it ended up working against Clark and them, where they just got tired and weren't able to really go full in the fourth quarter.
I was going to say that was probably the key, to be honest with you. I didn't get to watch this game. I was actually busy on Sunday afternoon as well. It was literally, side note, I am not. California is a wonderful state. I grew up in it. It's kind of gotten off the rails a little bit. There's some crazy stuff going on. But if there's one thing that we've got, it's damn the weather. You know what I'm saying? The reason on Sunday, it is the reason why people live in California. It was the perfect freaking day. I'm talking 70 degrees, light, cool breeze, blue sky, no clouds, clear. You can see LA from the mountains. It was picture perfect yesterday. So excuse me for not sitting in front of a television, but I digress. I didn't get to watch it, but I think that what you're talking about, Caitlin Clark getting pressure, is the key. That's really what all they have to do, because that's the entire, not defense, but the entire offense runs through Caitlin Clark, at
Yeah.
least at their most efficient point. I'm not saying other people can't do stuff. I know they have a couple other guards in Kate Martin and Marshall. I forgot her first name.
Yeah, Gabby.
Apologies. Gabby, thank you, and Gabby Marshall, who could do stuff, and they're great shooters and some playmakers, but none of them are like Caitlin. And if you could take her out of the game, that's when things get really interesting. And well, at least for your team, if you're playing defense,
Yeah.
because again, she can only do so much, like Edie.
Yeah, and it's weird too because like watching the game, especially in early, like you could see that Caitlin was finding open players on cuts and like half court, seeing somebody dive into the paint and throwing passes. But South Carolina, especially with Camila Cardoso, I mean, just
Oh
6'7" and covering the
shit!
paint and making life hard. Them as a team had, I think, like 7 or 8 blocks. So they're not making it easy on you, even if you think it's easy and you're getting nice cuts and runs and passes from Caitlin. They're not finishing. They missed a couple layups even when they weren't getting blocked by Cardoso. Like the depth of South Carolina, and I don't remember who said it during the game. I don't know if it was the sideline, Holly Rowe, or Rebecca Lobo, but she talked about how like Don Staley's whole like culture that she's built is team first, and part of that is she's like, you could go to another school and be the star player and average 20 or 25 points a game, but if you're going to come to South Carolina, you're going to play your role. You might play more minutes one game or more than the other, or less here, because depending on what's going on in the matchups, if you're team first oriented and you want to win, that's where you go. And that's why they lost 5 players last year who all got drafted in the WNBA draft, and they were in the Final Four last year. They lost to Iowa. They come back this year with like basically a whole new squad, except a couple of returners. They get to the title game, and then they get revenge on Iowa for their Final Four loss last year. I don't know what else
Poetry.
Dawn just knows what she's doing, and she just knows when to push the buttons and who to put in at the right time, and she's just got a feel. I mean, obviously helps. She was a player herself. She was on Team USA women's back in the day, won a gold medal, so she knows the game inside and out. But man, does she know her players and her bench very well as well.
Yeah, her players are. I guess I like what you mentioned is like a more well-rounded team.
Yeah.
I've never watched more college. I've never watched more women's basketball in general than I have probably in the past few weeks, just because the whole tournament, not just Iowa and Caitlin Clark, the whole tournament was really, there's so much buzz around it.
Yep.
But following Caitlin, because she's just insane to watch, and it's a point that I want to make towards the end. But let's kind of discuss the game continuing. Her and Hannah Stolke, which is their biggest forward. It's a forward. They play with four guards and a forward. They don't really
Yeah.
have
A center. Yeah.
a center, and she's not the tallest. I think she's probably like 6'2", maybe. So she's a little bit smaller than Cardoso, or Cordoso. No, Cardoso.
Yeah, you're
Apologies.
right.
But you could tell that she was not timid per se, but maybe she was outmatched maybe by Cardoso, because I watched a lot of Iowa games leading up to it, especially the one where they played UConn. I was actually at the gym, bro, and they had it on the TV. You should see how many people were just standing there not working out watching the game, bro. It was so funny. But I've seen it. Stokey, dude, it's a great 1-2 pick and roll, either bounce pass or over the top. And Stokey was just really like honed down. Cardoso was insane. In fact, Ryan, I think his name was Rocco, one of the announcers for the game you found.
Guy.
He literally, I was watching the replay, and there was a quote that he had in there, and it was, to me, besides Tessa Johnson, the guard for South Carolina, it really kind of was the entirety of the game. He said, Cardoso feels inevitable.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what it was. Whatever needed to happen in the paint, she was making it happen, whether that's blocks like you were talking about. She had 3 of the team's 8, or just efficient scoring and rebounding right around the net. It's just, it messed her all up. It messed up Iowa, and kind of showed it from the results.
And they talked about it on the broadcast. Rebecca Lobo mentioned multiple times, like they knew going into this game, Iowa was going to have to be very good about rebounding and boxing out because they had such length disadvantage against South Carolina. But South Carolina would miss a shot and they'd get an offensive rebound and get another opportunity. And that's part of the reason that they were able to win, because they just had more opportunities. And you look at the team as a whole, I think Iowa shot 39% from the field and from 3, so they didn't shoot well. And South Carolina shot 47% from the field and 42 from 3. So better shooting, more opportunities, obviously, as far as the offensive rebounding goes. And you talked about Cardoso having 3 blocks of the 8. Like, even though she only had 3 blocks, there's probably so many other, which this is never a stat that they keep, but altered shots just because of her presence down there.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And I mean, Gabby Marshall only had 6 points, which is basically her season average, which I was kind of shocked when I looked. I thought she had a better
because
average.
In the tournament, I see her freaking shooting lights out like a lot.
Yeah, so I looked
crazy.
and no, she had a season average of 6, so she hit her average, but there wasn't very many opportunities because since the paint was so clogged, and like you mentioned with Clark and what's the forward's name? Stolke. Like the pick and roll game was just not there because they couldn't get it inside to her. So then going inside out just didn't happen in this game, and it made it really hard for Iowa to like figure out what to do. And because again, Raven Johnson was so good on Clark just ran out of space and energy when it came down to the end of the game. There was a couple threes that she threw up in the middle of the 4th when it was still kind of close. And I'm like, now you're pushing. Like you have more time. You need to force some of those shots.
I saw some of those shots too when I was watching the highlights. I was like, come on, man. You guys, it's not like the Purdue UConn game that we just watched where basically they were down 15 damn near the whole time. You know what I mean? Like it was within reach if you just get 2 or get a good shot. If it happens to be 3, so be it. But get a good shot, get a stop, get a good shot and a stop, and you're back in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I'm not saying she was trying to play hero ball, but maybe she just felt like,
I mean,
maybe she felt Cardoso is inevitable.
Yeah. Like she had to if she's out from outside shooting, she has a better opportunity than them going back inside with Cardoso down there. And somebody who I don't know if they talked about it much during the broadcast, but I know they interviewed her after the game. At least Holly Rowe did on the stage. Chloe Kitts, who had 11 points and 10 rebounds for South Carolina too, like not talked about as much, but still a very vital role. And again, the boards, the rebounds, they were able to keep Iowa from getting up second chance opportunities. They gave themselves multiple second chance opportunities, and what's Johnson, the girl from South Carolina? She had Tessa. She had, as a freshman, I mean, stepping up big and having huge threes in this game. I mean, a couple of them were like, oh, okay, that's gonna stretch this out, and they really might be able to run away with it. And then Iowa make a little run, and then they get another bucket or two to make it back to 8 or 9. Iowa could only get it back within a 2 or 3, and then it seemed like South Carolina like woke up and was like, okay, no, we're not letting them tie this game or get a lead, and they just kind of pushed it back up to 8. And that's just kind of how the whole second half went once they got the lead at halftime.
Dude, Tessa stepping up to the 3-point line like Caitlin, who? Just fucking draining it, dude. Yeah, 19 points, a steal, an assist, only one turnover, holding the ball the whole time. 3 for 6 from beyond the arc, 7-11 on the game, 2 for 2 from the free throw line. I mean,
as a freshman.
As a freshman, she killed it. She did great. So her and Cardoso, I mean, it was a team effort, like we've talked about. This is a lot more than a 1-2 punch, especially similar to what Iowa was. But yeah, man, it was really good. I have a lot of good things to say about Caitlin Clark, but before I do, I have one thing that I want to say, and I don't know if it's not necessarily her fault. I know it was a lot of her frustration because that freaking insanely smothering defense that South Carolina was doing. There's a lot of replays that either refs were letting them or they were told to, and she was pushing off like fucking crazy because it was swarming. Everyone was on her.
Yeah, it was a physical game.
Yeah, but I like that they just let him play. Some of them, she definitely should have been called for an offensive foul. I saw at least 2 where she's like, I mean, it's like a playground fight is the beginning. That's how hard the push is. So
yeah,
some of them, here or there. But again, you're in the middle of it. You're just trying to get open. I'm not knocking her. I'm about to give her a bunch of good stuff that I'm talking about. So I want to say, nothing's perfect. She could probably learn how to maybe get some separation, break off these screens a little bit going into the WNBA, have a little bit more of a repertoire than threes and drive. But she is amazing. So
well, it is going to help when she goes to Indiana. She's going to be paired up with what's the girl that from South Carolina last year was the number 1 pick overall? Leah Boston, is that who
I'm just getting into the W. So
I think it's Leah Boston. She was the she was the center last year for South Carolina and helped them win the title in 2022. And she's the best player, was the number 1 pick last year for Indiana. So
Leah Boston.
So pairing them up, and Boston's a little bit bigger, like Cardoso, not quite as big, but a little bit bigger. So if they can get their pick and roll game together next year, depending on what Indiana has around them as a roster, like they're going to be good from right off the bat. I think over there for the Fever.
Wow. I just Googled Indiana Fever to make sure that's for the team. And this random, how sometimes when you put Google, they have like other things about it and Twitter posts, right?
Yeah.
So this person posted, the Las Vegas Aces are moving their matchup against the Indiana Fever and potential number 1 pick Caitlin Clark this upcoming season to the T-Mobile Arena to accommodate 8,000 more seats.
Yeah.
Teams are changing venues before she's even drafted.
Yep. And the Sparks, last year, I heard on the radio the other day, they talked about last year, the Indiana Fever, when they came to play the Sparks, you could get a ticket for one person for like $5. Now, with them knowing that Clark's going to be on the Fever, it's not even under $100. It's like $120 a ticket to get in the building. So it's a huge game changer. The Phoenix Mercury already put out a poster of when they come to town to play the Mercury, like the GOAT versus the Rook with Diana Taurasi. And then it's like a kind of a blacked out shadow with a number 22, because obviously Clark's not officially in the league yet, so you can't say her name.
Can't use her name.
But like,
she's still getting paid by other people.
Yeah, but it's coming. So all the WNBA teams are already marketing for her to come visit. And I mean, it's good for the league. I mean, the numbers came in today. Last week, I think it was the Final Four game last night against UConn, was 14 million people max. Then they came out today, it was 18 for the championship game against South Carolina. So people are watching. It's good. It's growing the game.
Agreed. And that will kind of get us into our final thought, at least one for me. I'm going to bring some stuff up, and I know you'll have some stuff to say about it. But before we do, congratulations to South Carolina on your national champions. 2 and 3 years. That's freaking awesome. Don Staley, hats off. You are a freaking great coach on your way to becoming a legendary one. And to the players, to Iowa, congrats on a good season. Kaylin, see you in the W.
Dude, not only that, you mentioned Dawn Staley 2 and 3 years, 109-3 in the last 3 seasons as a record. That is crazy good, and her 3rd title as the coach. So yeah, whatever Dawn's doing or has in the water down there, just keep doing it.
And I know the disparities, I guess, is the only word I could think of in women's college basketball, are a little bit more so than the men's teams, as far as like, there are a lot of teams there's only, I'd say 20 teams that are good and a bunch that are like really far below them. Whereas men's, it's a little bit more of an arch kind of thing. You can kind of get like a decent of him. And the fact that, they were able to kind of get all this. UConn was 37-3 this year. So they've lost 3 games this year.
Yeah.
The national, Don Staley's lost 3 games in 3 freaking years. That's That's fucking impressive, dude.
Really 3 and this year none. So really it was 2 years ago
2 years, yeah,
and that
true,
they
yeah,
lost
that's true.
3 games
38
in,
no this year, yeah.
and I don't know. It's just an astronomical amount of winning, and I hope it continues next year because they're going to have a lot of them coming back. I see obviously Cardoso is going to go to the WNBA as well, but I think
As she should.
most of the team, Johnson, as we talked about, freshman. Tessa Johnson and Raven. She's a sophomore, so she'll be back. So they're going to be good next year too. They ain't going nowhere.
Nope. Stolke's back because she's only a sophomore, so that's why she's going up against
Yeah,
Cardoso, so she's got a lot to still learn. But she'll improve, I'm sure. She's on her way to being great. So congratulations to both teams. Well, to all 4 teams for making it to the finals and for the 2 winners. That's awesome. But I want to wrap this episode up with my kind of final thoughts here. I honestly kind of enjoyed watching the women's tournament a little bit more so than the men's tournament. Now,
Max.
I watched more of the men's tournament because I'm super into those first couple of days, so I watched more games of the men's tournament, but I was paying attention to the results of the women's tournament a lot more. And I think there's 2 reasons for it. Well, actually, to be honest with you, I think there's only 1 reason for it, and I don't know if it changes or not. Maybe they're kind of related. The women's team can actually build storylines, right? And I know everyone knows this,
True.
but the fact that they have to, as in WNBA rules, play for, I think, 4 years in
At least
college.
3, yeah.
Okay, so it's at least 3. Kind of helps the NCAA in building these storylines, the Caitlin Clark storylines, the LSU storylines, the Caitlin Clark versus LSU storylines, South Carolina coming back for another thing, UConn's team having Paige Beckers being hurt and coming back. There's so much stories in basketball because, to be honest with you, that's really what basketball is more so. We care about the football games because there's so few of them. But basketball is about storylines. What's happening? Who should we watch and why should we watch them? And I just want to give major props to the women's game, something I've never really disrespected, but I've never watched in any really shape or form. They're definitely getting me into at least women's college basketball. And as I start seeing, some of these young women get drafted, it's only inevitable for me to go watch. So, men's obviously is a lot one and done, especially the best players. They kind of move on to the NBA.
Yeah.
And I think the second side to that, and then I'll let you go. I'm sorry, Corey, I'm talking so much,
No,
is
you're
the
good,
NIL
man.
thing. The other thing is like men, as much as they can get paid in college, if they're good, they can get paid more in the NBA. So they go. It's unfortunately right now, and I'm a business major and a capitalist, so I understand the principles of it. It's more lucrative to stay for the individual player in college basketball if you're one of the big names because of NIL, as opposed to the money that you're not necessarily making in the WNBA. I'm hoping over time the game grows and viewers watch more so they can kind of go up because that's just how it works. Let's be honest, the WNBA has lost money in every single year they've ever been in existence. So I don't want to get into a pay gap disparity right now, but in order to turn profits or in order to make money, you need to turn profits. So until they start doing that, I want it to get there, but I understand the principle of where we're at. So I just thought it was really good overall. And then I have some other stuff I want to say, but I'll let you, what do you think about, the tournament in general compared especially men's versus women?
I'm with you. The storylines, them being able to be there for 3 years, you get to know them and the teams. It's not just like you said, one and done. Where I didn't even know half the teams even had a player on it in the men's that I even knew them by name until you get to like maybe the Elite Eight. I'm like, oh, I know a couple of these guys. I've heard them on SportsCenter or mentioned somewhere before, but like for the most part, I don't know any of these guys. I don't pay attention to them, and they're not talked about that often. But the women's game, they're there for 3 years or 4 years. You get to know them, and I mean, Caitlin Clark alone doing the ultimate scoring thing for the women's and men's record and breaking it. She has the most points in women's March Madness history in a career now. She passed that yesterday. So just more and more, it's like, dang, there's so much more here about these girls that I didn't realize and I get to learn and know about. And to your point too, like, I don't know, the game is just, it's more pure in a sense, since there's no like dunking, and it's not that they're not athletic or it's not physical, but it's more about the actual team and game and running a system and being able to play a more complete game as an individual player. And I think as a basketball fan as I am, because I grew up, I mean, you remember I was shooting hoops in my backyard every single day after school by myself for hours at a time. Like I just love the game of basketball. I go to Big West games when the tournament was at Honda Center and sit in a stadium of like 400 people total at the Honda Center watching college basketball teams that I don't even follow, but just because I love the game of basketball. Like, I just love basketball that much. It's kind of like baseball. The two of them I could just sit and watch regardless of who's playing, men's, women's. I've been to a Sparks game to see Sabrina Ionescu play for the New York Liberty because I'm a huge fan of her as well. Like I'm a WNBA fan. I try to watch it as much as I can. Just again, I love basketball, and when the players are good and the game is good, I'm in. It doesn't matter what level we're talking about.
Yep. And I'm getting there. I haven't necessarily seen the same skill set yet on a whole basis of the women. I do love your point though. There's no real hero ball. Well, I mean a little bit with Iowa because Caitlin Clark is Caitlin
Yeah.
Clark, but there's no real hero ball in this. You're not just like, okay, give him the ball and stand out of the way. Which is a real quick point. I know I was telling it to you when I was watching the highlights, but I want to go back to the men's game. Bro, UConn. I think the Lakers need to go watch fucking UConn run an offense because all the Lakers do is give the ball to Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and fucking stand there. Dude,
Yeah.
UConn is screening and cutting and this and picking this way and running back door. Move.
I mean, that's what made the Warriors so good for so long because they were all about movement. They didn't stand around. Even when Steph had the ball, there's Clay's moving and Draymond's screening. Like there's things going on around the court, not just Steph with the ball at the top.
Yeah. So, and to your point, anyways, the women's game was really, really good. I'm getting a little bit more into it. The skill level is starting to really peak. And that's the very last point that at least I want to make, and I want to get into it. There's times where, I mean, we've been on this earth for 35 years now. Now, granted, we don't remember all 35, so let's just say 25. There's moments in life where people kind of like just blow you away. But there's also moments in sports where that same thing can happen. And there's sometimes where you just feel you just have to watch something happen. Okay. Something just drives you to need to watch this. They're just unmissable moments. Okay. Let me give you a couple examples. Let me see maybe if you either agree or maybe you can even add some. When Steph Curry touches the basketball court.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
You never know what's gonna freaking happen. He's changed the game so much. When Michael Phelps is racing in the Olympics and he's getting in that pool, you just can't miss it. He is so great. You just need to be there. Tiger Woods on Sunday. I mean, really the whole weekend, but damn near on Sunday.
Yeah,
Jordan and Ali, right? And even let's take a moment and not do individual people. The Bonds, McGuire, Sosa home run race. There's moments where you're just like, dude, I have to watch this.
Yeah.
I felt that way and now currently feel that way about Caitlin Clark, which is the first female I've ever felt that way about, especially when it comes to basketball. And that's not a knock. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying I've never been into it.
Yeah.
I was looking to see when Iowa was going to play because to me it was must-watch television. When I first watched her play, I was like, holy shit, everything these people say is true. And the only person that I put also because I only watched one game, and the way she moved was effortless. She made everybody else look mediocre, and she was a freshman. Juju Watkins, if she continues on this path, bro, these women are so talented. It's above and beyond. I'm not saying that they aren't talented, but they're separating themselves where you're just like, oh man, you really need to watch this. So I put her in that echelon, and I'm curious to see if you agree with some of the people, maybe disagree, or what you think about it.
No, you're right. Curry, I mean, even now he's our age, he's 35 and he's on the back end, but he's still just like every shot he takes from beyond the three, I assume it's going to go in unless I see it not go in. Like it's just he's not good. Yes. And you talked about Phelps in his heyday. Like I don't watch the Olympics. I don't give a shit about the Olympics, winter or summer. I never pay attention. I just see like all the highlights or the headlines on the internet. But Phelps, it was like, dude, he's winning everything. When's he going to lose? I got to keep watching to see if he's actually going to lose something. Tiger Woods in his prime. I mean, he changed the whole thing of golf. Like people watched golf before him, but like not like they did once he was in it, and he was dominating because nobody had done that before in that fashion. And on Sundays, I mean, with the red shirts and going out for the blood, like it was just his thing. Jordan in the 90s, like 6 titles and technically 8 years, but 6 when he was actually playing in those years. And yeah, I'm with you. Caitlin Clark and Juju Watkins, Paige Beckers will be back next year for UConn. So there's another couple females to watch there as well. There's some people that you can just watch with the eye test.
There's something different,
you're not a fan of the sport or the team, but you can just be like, yeah, I get it. I understand why people.
I need to watch this, and I don't mean to. I'm not trying to shy away, and I'm not trying to correct you. And if you feel that, great, because obviously this is a more. But even Paige, to me, she plays like other players play. Like she's really
Well,
good.
she's really good, but she also just came off of a torn ACL, so maybe
True.
next year, the second year after that, she'll be even better and
She'll
maybe
be back to
separate
her
herself
kind
a
of
little
like,
bit for you to
yeah.
notice. But I've been watching her since she got to UConn initially as a freshman, and she's damn good, man. But I'm with you on
Okay.
Juju. She's gonna be. I mean,
So
maybe it's because we live in LA too,
smooth.
and USC is here. That helps. We get to see her
Nah,
a
I'm
little
not
bit
trying to be
more.
too
But
biased.
damn, she is good. She's a
Yeah.
baller.
So I just wanted to give props where props is due. I've like I said, I've never been a hater per se, but I've just never been into it. And I was drawn in, like I said, even more than the men's one this year. So again, congratulations to all the teams and individual players and coaches. It was a great tournament. Congrats to the NCAA making billions of dollars and sharing with nobody. But they did put on a good show, so here we are for that.
I was just gonna say, as you said, congratulations NCAA. I was like, okay, but then I like the second half of that.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, I got to
I
throw
like
the jokes in. You
it
know what I mean?
because
I'm not giving
they're a
NCAA
terrible
props for
organization overall. But yeah,
100%. I ain't
they
giving the
got lucky
NCAA
this
props
year.
for shit. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, I mean their sports are great. It's just how they run it kind of sucks
Yeah,
ass, but
it's the
yeah, it
worst.
is what it is. So. But I mean that pretty much wraps this one up. Before we go though, just want to let you guys know Corey's taking a little bit of a trip. He's going to go visit some family, so we're going to take
Yep.
about a week off or so. Corey, you want to say anything about
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna go back to Ohio again, see my sister and brother-in-law, and actually get to see my niece now that she's not in the NICU anymore, like she was the
that?
last time
Woo!
I was there. She's actually been at home for I don't know 3 or 4 weeks now. I've been getting a bunch of pictures,
Nice,
and she's doing really well. So I'm excited to go
awesome.
back with my parents and like spend some actual family time with her and get to like hang out with her and hold her and be around her
Yeah.
more than 30 minutes that I was the last time I saw her. So I'm excited, and then yeah, when we get back, we'll start getting ready for the NFL draft right around the corner. NBA playoffs are about to start. We'll be a couple weeks into the baseball season. We'll update on some injuries we might have accidentally made happen, but that's a whole nother topic for when we get there.
Corey, why you gotta freaking shit on me right before we leave, man? I didn't do it on purpose. I was trying to predict stuff. Okay.
Hey, it happens. Hey, our division picks aren't going to look good with some of these injuries either, so you never know.
Shit, dude. I know. I know. Yeah. All right. Well, congrats again to Mel and Kev. Glad everybody's back safe. But yeah, appreciate everybody stopping by and joining us. Thank you as always for seeing things from our view from the bench. I'm Brendan.
And I'm Corey. Like we always say, enjoy the sports until we talk again.
Peace.
This was a Sycamore Fourth Studios production.